Welcome to the SafeSimpleSound podcast, where our approach to financial planning creates both and solutions for the contradictions families face in a complex economic world. In today's episode, we are continuing a very special series we call S3 Insurer Intelligence. Specifically, we are exploring the second part of this series, Decoding the DNA of Loyalty. If you joined us for our previous discussion, which drew from part one of this blog series, you'll remember we talked about the geography of safety. We discussed why where your insurer is legally domiciled matters for your security. That was about the legal ground beneath your feet. But today, we need to shift our focus from the legal ground to the human and corporate relationships that stand upon it. We are diving into a topic we recently wrote about on the SafeSimpleSound blog because it addresses a fundamental question every family must ask. Who owns the promise? When you sign a contract for a financial product, whether it's life insurance, an annuity, or a long-term strategy, you are entering a relationship. But the insurance industry is filled with legal definitions that often muddy the waters. Consider the classic contradiction we see families face. We call it the friendly agent versus the fiduciary reality. You may like your financial professional personally. They might be your neighbor, your friend, or someone you see at the Rotary Club. But from a SafeSimpleSound perspective, we have to look past the handshake and look at the contract. Who do they legally represent? And equally important, who does the insurance company itself actually serve? Whether you are just starting to build your financial foundation or you are looking to secure a legacy for the next generation, this episode will give you the tools to distinguish between a salesperson and a partner. We are going to decode the DNA of loyalty in two specific areas: ownership structure, meaning stock versus mutual companies, and legal standing, meaning agents versus brokers. By the end of this episode, you will understand how to apply the principle of stakeholder synthesis to ensure that everyone involved in your financial plan is pulling in the same direction. Let's begin by establishing the foundation of this discussion. At SafeSimpleSound, we often talk about the safe in our name. Safety isn't just about avoiding investment loss, it is about avoiding structural conflict. When we look at the financial landscape through our practices lens, we see that many families feel a sense of unease, not because the market is volatile, but because they aren't sure if their financial institutions are truly on their side. This brings us to the first major distinction we need to make today: stock insurance companies versus mutual insurance companies. This is the corporate side of the loyalty equation. In the traditional financial world, you might hear advice that says, just pick a big company with a recognizable name. That sounds simple, but it ignores the architecture of the company. Through our S3 framework, we approach this differently. We don't just look at the logo, we look at the ledger. We need to ask, who owns the company? Because ownership dictates where the profits go, and ultimately where the loyalty lies. Let's break this down into simple terms. First, let's look at stock insurance companies. Most of the companies you see advertised on television are stock companies. These organizations are owned by shareholders, investors who bought stock on the public market. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with a stock company. They provide goods and services. However, drawing from our team's analysis of corporate structures, we have to acknowledge the primary goal of a stock company: to maximize profit for the shareholders. This creates a structural conflict, an either-or dilemma. If the company has a great year and generates a surplus, where does that money go? In a stock company, those profits often go to the investors in the form of dividends or stock appreciation. Conversely, if the company pays out fewer claims to policyholders, their stock price often goes up. In this relationship, your role is strictly defined. You are a customer. You buy a product, they deliver a service. The company's loyalty is legally bound to the shareholder, not the customer. This aligns with the corporate mandate of quarterly earnings pressure from Wall Street. Now let's contrast that with mutual insurance companies. This is a structure that aligns much more closely with our preference for sound planning. Mutual insurance companies are owned by the policyholders. That means you. When you buy a participating whole life policy from a mutual company, you aren't just a customer, you are a member and an owner. Here, the goal is different. The goal is to maximize security and value for the members. This creates a both-and solution. There are no outside shareholders demanding quarterly profits. If the company manages its investments well and has a surplus, that profit is often returned to you, the policyholder, in the form of a dividend. Think of it as the difference between renting an apartment and owning a co-op. When you rent, your landlord uses your money to pay their mortgage and generate their profit. When you are in a mutual structure, the success of the building benefits the people living inside it. This brings us to a core SafeSimpleSound concept we call time coexistence. In our practice, we often remind families that financial planning isn't about next week. It's about the next 3 or 4 decades. If you are setting up a strategy that needs to last for 30 or 40 years, like a whole life insurance policy or an income annuity, we generally prefer mutual companies. Why? Because the time coexistence principle suggests that over that long horizon, we want your interests aligned with the company's long-term survival, not the short-term earnings pressure of the stock market. If a stock company has a bad quarter, they might be tempted to cut benefits or increase costs to satisfy Wall Street. A mutual company, however, can look at the horizon. They can make decisions that ensure stability for decades because they answer only to you. From a SafeSimpleSound perspective, this provides the stability we look for. It removes the friction of conflicting interests. But the company structure is only half of the equation. We also have to look at the messenger. This leads us to the second distinction, the insurance agent versus the insurance broker. Just as companies have legal DNA, so do the people who sit across the table from you. This is where things can get confusing. So let's use the simple part of our framework to clarify. We often use the term financial advisor as a catch-all phrase, but legally, titles matter. First, let's talk about the insurance agent. Legally, an agent is a representative of the insurance company. Their contract binds them to the carrier. They are the company's voice to you. Within this, you have captive agents. These are professionals who can only sell one brand. Think of the big names like State Farm or Allstate. They are loyal to the brand because their contract prohibits them from selling anything else. Then you have independent agents. They can sell multiple brands, which is better, but they still legally represent the insurers they are appointed with. Now, contrast that with the insurance broker. Legally, a broker represents the client. That's you. A broker doesn't work for the insurance company. They work for the family. Their job is to scour the market to find the best fit for your needs, regardless of whose logo is on the policy. The broker wants to find a solution that fits your life, rather than trying to fit your life into a specific company's product box. Through our SafeSimpleSound practice, we operate as independent agents, not captive to any single company. We believe this independence is critical for integrity. We want to sit on your side of the table, shopping multiple carriers with a fiduciary mindset. This distinction, captive versus independent, is the difference between being limited to one company's products and having someone who can shop the market for what actually fits your situation. When we combine these two concepts, mutual companies and broker relationships, we create what we call structural alignment. It resolves the loyalty contradiction. Instead of hoping your agent is unbiased, we rely on the legal structure to ensure it. It's not personal, it's constitutional. To illustrate this principle of structural alignment and the DNA of loyalty, let me share a hypothetical scenario with you. Please keep in mind that while this story is created for educational purposes to demonstrate S3 principles, it reflects the patterns we consistently observe when families apply or fail to apply systematic thinking to their financial planning. Imagine a fictional couple. Let's call them Mark and Elena. Mark and Elena are in their early 40s. They are diligent savers, they value security, and they want to ensure that their retirement planning is built on a solid foundation. They embody the values of prudence and foresight. A few years ago, Mark and Elena decided they needed to secure some permanent life insurance to protect their income and build a tax-advantaged asset for the future. They met with a gentleman named Bob. Bob is a fantastic guy. He coaches the local Little League team, he's active in the community, and he's been a neighbor for years. Bob works for a large, well-known insurance carrier. Let's call it Big Stock Life. Bob sat down with Mark and Elena and recommended a universal life policy from Big Stock Life. He showed them illustrations of how the policy could perform if the stock market did well. He emphasized the flexibility of the premiums. Mark and Elena liked Bob. They trusted him. Because Bob was friendly, they assumed the advice was sound. They moved forward with the policy. Now, fast forward 10 years in this hypothetical timeline. The economy has shifted, interest rates have fluctuated, and the stock market has had its ups and downs. Mark and Elena open their annual statement from Big Stock Life. They are shocked to see that the cash value in their policy is significantly lower than what was originally illustrated. Even worse, the cost of insurance inside the policy has skyrocketed. They call Bob. Bob is apologetic, but he explains that Big Stock Life had to increase internal costs to maintain profitability for their shareholders during a tough economic cycle. He explains that because it is a stock company, their primary duty was to protect the stock price. Furthermore, because Bob was a captive agent for Big Stock Life, he couldn't offer them a better product from a competitor 10 years ago. He was contractually obligated to sell what was on his shelf. Mark and Elena are frustrated. They feel like the loyalty was one-sided. Now, let's rewind this hypothetical scenario and apply the SafeSimpleSound framework. Imagine Mark and Elena had instead worked with a practice operating under the S3 methodology, an independent brokerage focused on wealth. In this version of the story, the advisor sits on the same side of the table as Mark and Elena. The advisor says, "Mark, Elena, we are acting as brokers for you. That means we don't represent the insurance company, we represent your family." The advisor looks at the entire marketplace. They recommend a whole life policy, but not from a stock company. They recommend a policy from a massive 150-year-old mutual insurance company. The advisor explains, "We are choosing this mutual company because, as policyholders, you will be the owners. If the company does well, you get the dividends, not Wall Street." 10 years pass in this version of the story. The same economic fluctuations happen. Interest rates move, the market wobbles. Mark and Elena open their statement from the mutual company. They see that while the dividend scale has adjusted slightly to match the economy, their cash value has grown steadily. Every year, the guaranteed cash value increased, and they received a dividend check that purchased more paid-up insurance, compounding their growth. There were no surprise cost hikes because the mutual company didn't need to strip value from Mark and Elena to pay an outside shareholder. The loyalty was locked in. While this story of Mark and Elena is fictional, it demonstrates how our framework of stakeholder synthesis works in the real world. In the first scenario, the loyalty was fractured. Bob the agent was loyal to the company. The company's stock was loyal to the shareholders. Mark and Elena were left holding the bag. In the second scenario, the SafeSimpleSound scenario, the loyalty was aligned. The broker was loyal to Mark and Elena. The mutual company was loyal to Mark and Elena as owners. This is what we call the double lock on loyalty. Through this example, you can see how thinking applies. It's not about whether Bob was a bad guy. Bob was likely a great person stuck in a bad structure. This aligns with the principle that structure dictates behavior. If you put a good person in a system designed to serve shareholders, they will serve shareholders. If you put a good person in a system designed to serve policyholders, they will serve policyholders. Whether you're facing this exact scenario or something similar, the lesson is clear. You cannot rely on personality to protect your wealth. You must rely on structure. From a SafeSimpleSound perspective, this provides the soundness we crave. We don't want to hope that our insurer treats us well. We want a contract that guarantees our interests are aligned. This is why we say that alignment isn't just a buzzword. Alignment is architecture. You aren't just buying a policy. You are entering a marriage of sorts with a financial institution. You need to make sure the legal DNA of that relationship is coded for your benefit. When we look at our S3 insurer intelligence model, we see this pattern repeat over and over. Families who utilize independent brokers and mutual carriers tend to have higher satisfaction and better long-term performance because the friction of profit-taking is removed from the equation. It turns a consumer experience into an ownership experience. And in the world of finance, owners always win over the long term. As we bring this episode to a close, let's summarize the key insights we've uncovered today regarding the DNA of loyalty. We started by acknowledging the friendly agent versus fiduciary reality contradiction. We learned that a smile and a handshake do not equal legal alignment. We explored the difference between stock companies owned by shareholders and mutual companies owned by you, the policyholder. We discussed how our S3 framework prioritizes mutual companies for long-term strategies because they eliminate the conflict of interest between Wall Street and your wallet. We also clarified the difference between an agent who represents the company and a broker who represents you. Drawing from our CFC background at SafeSimpleSound, our approach suggests that the double lock, combining a mutual carrier with an independent broker, is the most effective way to achieve stakeholder synthesis. This ensures that the client, the advisor, and the provider are all pulling in the same direction. So, what is your next step? We believe it is time to audit your current insurance relationships. Whether you have existing policies or are looking to start, ask yourself, do you have a customer relationship or an owner relationship? Is your advisor a representative of the company or an advocate for you? You don't have to guess at these answers. We have developed 2 specific tools to help you integrate this knowledge. This episode draws from our recent blog post, Decoding the DNA of Loyalty, which you can find at SafeSimpleSound.com. In that post, we offer, first, the alignment decoder. This is a simple guide that includes what we call the badge check, 3 specific questions you can ask your agent to reveal their legal standing. It also includes a straightforward matrix comparing stock versus mutual benefits. Second, we have the carrier scorecard. This is a self-assessment tool where you can list your current policies and grade them based on safety, ownership structure, and financial strength. Through our S3 approach development, we've created these resources to be valuable whether you engage with our practice or not. This is our commitment to educational generosity. Knowing the difference between an agent and a broker empowers you to ask better questions of any financial professional you meet. Even if you never speak with us directly, you are now equipped with capability that will serve your family for decades. However, if today's S3 insights resonate with your family's situation and you want to ensure your financial house is built on the bedrock of mutual ownership and broker advocacy, we invite you to explore what financial planning could look like through our SafeSimpleSound practice. You can visit us online to learn more about how we apply these principles to build durable, both and financial strategies. Thank you for listening to the SafeSimpleSound podcast. Remember, in a world of financial noise, the most powerful thing you can possess is a framework that keeps you safe, simple, and sound. Until next time.